To other news now, and opposition supporters in Thailand are holding their final rally before Sunday's election. The government is pushing ahead with the election despite protesters' threats to disrupt the vote. Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra has appealed for demonstrators to show restraint. Let's cross live now to our correspondent Wayne Hay, who's with anti-government protesters in Bangkok. And Wayne, just how determined are this group of people to disrupt, to block the election?
Well, the anti-government protest leaders have said several times that they will not ask their people to physically try to stop people voting on the election day. But clearly they do want to disrupt the day. They will use different tactics, like simply coming out onto the streets of the capital, Bangkok, and other parts of Thailand to protest, to continue their rallying and make it difficult for voters to move around the city. They've also gone to government buildings, such as here where I am in the Bangkok suburb of Laxi. They are outside a local administrative building, which is where there are ballot papers, many ballot papers stored inside. Those papers are due to leave here in the early hours of Sunday morning and go out to the polling booths. The protesters have come here, they're camping outside and saying that that will not happen. They will not allow anyone inside to retrieve those papers and take them out to the polling booths. And this is something that is happening in other parts of Thailand as well. Increasing concerns about violence. There were at least 2 shooting incidents in Bangkok alone on Friday night, Saturday morning, including one here in Laxi, and that is increasing concerns about what may unfold on Sunday, as Scott Heidler reports.
In last-minute campaigning on the streets of Bangkok, a decidedly non-political issue has risen to the top: voter safety. There was violence when the anti-government protesters blocked polling centers last week during advance voting. These snap elections were called by Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra. Her response to the protesters' demand for her to resign. Standing firm, she told the protesters if they want her out, they have to do it through the ballot. Suthep Thakwasabon is a former deputy prime minister. In November, he gave up his seat as an opposition member of parliament to lead the protesters. He's called for a boycott of the election, saying anybody who turns out to vote supports the Thaksin regime, the protesters named for the government after Yingluck's older brother. We spoke with the opposition party leader, Abhisit Wachachiwa. He draws the distinction between the Democrat Party and the protesters.
They insist they are an independent movement, so they make their own decisions. But, we share the same objective, that the country needs to move to a situation where corruption, abuses of power, particularly abuses of the democratic process and institutions, should be a thing of the past.
The mass of people on the streets view their way as the only way forward for the country, even though the majority of Thai people support the government and the ruling Pheu Thai party.
Because of the concern about more violence and because of the environment the protesters here have created, as well as an election boycott called by the opposition party and the leaders of these protests, some feel as though this election on Sunday is about more than selecting a prime minister and a government.
They see it as a referendum on what system the government will operate under.
This time is absolutely different than all the history of election in Thailand. Now we go to vote for democracy. You are voting to prove that your vote matters.
Few hold hope that Sunday's polling will bring 8 years of political turmoil to an end. In fact, it's expected to take months before a government can be formed, if at all. Low numbers and legal complications could require additional elections or even nullify the results. So most are simply hoping that the ballots close without bloodshed. Scott Heidler, Al Jazeera, Bangkok.
Well, throughout this long-running anti-government protest over the past 3 months, the two sides, the opposing sides, have largely kept away from each other because of concerns that any small conflict may spark much wider violence. And that is certainly a worry heading into Sunday, heading into the election day. In the last few hours here in this part of Bangkok, we've seen this area become more heavily fortified by the anti-government protesters because they heard reports that pro-government groups were assembling less than a kilometre away. They are concerned that that pro-government group may come here to confront them, to try to lead the way to get those ballot papers out of here and out to the polling booths in time for Sunday.